Gardaí in Kerry are investigating the circumstances surrounding the death of a woman at a house in Killarney. The body of a woman in her 70s was discovered in a residential property at Ardshannavuli in Killarney, County Kerry at lunchtime today. The scene is currently preserved to allow for a technical examination to be conducted. The Office of the State Pathologist has been notified. Almost 2 kilos of MDMA tablets worth about €114,000 have been seized by revenue officers in Dublin. The seizure was made following a raid on a commercial premises in the capital this afternoon. Owen Murphy reports.
The premises in the Dublin 1 area was searched under warrant as part of an intelligence-led operation. The blue MDMA tablets, better known as ecstasy, would have a street value of over €114,000. The operation was part of Revenue's ongoing joint investigations targeting organised crime groups and the importation, sale and supply of illegal drugs. The raid was conducted by Revenue's Customs Service, the Garda National Drugs and Organised Crime Bureau and Store Street Garda Drugs Unit. A man in his 20s was arrested in connection with the seizure and is being held for questioning at Store Street Garda Station. Investigations are ongoing.
Concerns have been expressed about the surge in demand for energy, which will result from the setting up of 2 new Amazon centres in the capital. Planning permission's been granted for 2 more Amazon data centres in North Dublin. Social Democrat TD for Wicklow, Jennifer Whitmore, told the Hard Shoulder here on News Talk that the government has failed to analyse the effect data centres will have on electricity supplies.
Currently at around 14% of our electricity demand is actually from data centres. That's forecast to actually grow to 30% by 2028. So we can see, they are major energy users in Ireland. And my belief is that the government hasn't managed this properly. They haven't strategically, analysed the impact of the data centres.
It's 7:02.
News Talk weather.
Thanks to Ryanair. Goodbye Irish rain and buongiorno Italian sunshine. Fly to Milan, Turin or Rome this summer.
Showers in the south will gradually ease this evening and tonight, leaving a dry night for most with clear spells and a few well-scattered showers. Lowest overnight temperatures 10 to 14 degrees. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
The Newsround on Off the Ball.
With Gillette for an effortless finish to your day. New Gillette Labs razor with exfoliating bar.
This is News Talk.
Now then, welcome along. Monday's Off the Ball, Joe Molloy here. So honestly, we did say last week we would try and avoid Manchester United talk next Monday, but they don't make it easy. So here we are once again. Miguel Delaney with us 7:30 on the latest abomination. Pat Nevin after 9 o'clock. He was at Stamford Bridge. He witnessed those terrible scenes at full time. You hate to see them in the game. Wait, no, we love to see them in the game. The more aggro, the better, said Jamie Carragher. He was precisely correct. And then between 8 and 9, our new slot, we can tentatively say it's getting a surprisingly good reaction. It started over the summer break, and after much deliberation, it's called a slight tangent. We tend to use that phrase a lot. Team OTB, me, Mick, Ronan, Arthur, chat away. We don't overly prepare talking points. It seems to be working well-ish. People enjoying it-ish. So it gets another outing. 53106 is the text number. We're at Off the Ball on Twitter. Richie McCormack, hello.
Evening, Joe.
Dave McIntyre. Been too long.
Hi, lads.
Great to have you on, Dave. So a slight tangent between 8 and 9, Dave. I don't know if you've seen any of this, but it's not to be missed.
I haven't seen or heard it yet, okay. But now that you've teed it up so well, I'll make sure I'll tune in later.
It's I'm being a touch down on it. It's got a brilliant reaction. We started this during the summer where the football show would usually be, and it was almost like a OTB Raw. Let's just chat away about the things that we would talk about in the office outside after 10 o'clock, but let's do it on air, omitting, the things that would get us fired, obviously. And, it seems to be getting a very good reaction. So people have asked us to keep it going. So we're keeping it going for the foreseeable. So that's between 8 and 9. As for events around Old Trafford, not good. Definitely a moment, Dave, where for the second goal, David De Gea knew I shouldn't really pass the ball to Christian Eriksen here. It's not looking great for anyone. Everybody's marked. Brentford are really pressed up on us. But I think this thing that can affect players when a new manager takes over kicks in, whereby we've been given a new plan. I feel I should stick to the new plan. My instinct is telling me I should go long, but it is the new plan. I'll just go with the plan. And the inevitable happened, and the abomination continued. Really worrying start for Eric Ten Hag. He's got to get a hold of this pretty quickly. As crazy as it is to say about somebody who's inherited a mess and has only had 2 games, this can have a runaway train effect.
Absolutely. I don't think it's an exaggeration to call it a full-blown crisis already 2 games in. And if you had put together some sort of hypothetical nightmarish start to the Premier League season for Eric Ten Hag, even in his wildest, worst nightmares, I'm not sure it could have been any worse than what has happened over the last week. And we've said it so often over the last 18 months, this is a new low. Well, here we are again with this group of Manchester United players. This is a new low. And I was laughed at by some friends of mine when I was discussing Manchester United over the weekend by initially saying that if I had €20 of my own money, particularly away from home, there isn't a single club in the Premier League right now I would put that €20 down on them to beat. Not one. And that is a club, if you were talking in general terms about any other club, that's relegation material. The sort of club that you would not back to beat a single team in its division. There isn't one of them that I would, possibly Everton, maybe, away from home at Goodison Park, given how the difficulties they're experiencing under Lampard, that I might think United might go and beat. But I mean, even then, I would have to be persuaded to part with €20. I'm not saying they can be relegated. I'm not saying they're in for a relegation scrap. But no matter who their opposition was going to be in match week 3 of this season, which happens to be Liverpool, no matter who it was, I wouldn't be backing them to beat them. Such are the grave issues and problems that the club as a whole is experiencing, that Eric Ten Hag is experiencing. A group of players whose confidence is shot to pieces beyond oblivion and will take months to put back together if indeed it is those players that he'll be looking to do that with. So yeah, I don't even know where you begin with them now. Brentford haven't really been the story, even though they should be, because they were absolutely superb in that first half. But the first 2 goals in particular were, I mean, it's comical, kamikaze stuff.
Oh, it really is. Danny Murphy was in the Mail on Sunday saying De Gea can't play in a Ten Hag team. He's not a good enough footballing goalkeeper. You have a centre-half who cost 60 million in Martinez, who must really be wondering how he's going to cope in this league. That's not to mention Eriksen as now deep-line midfielder as opposed to false 9, being completely run over. Rashford, Sancho in abysmal form. I can't remember really a single thing Sancho has done since his arrival at the club. Rashford looks utterly dejected as a person. And then the Ronaldo situation is just comical. He completely blanked Ten Hag walking off the pitch on Saturday. It was very obvious he blanked him, and the relationship there isn't good. And the reports today, we'll talk to Miguel more at 7:30, but the reports today and over the last 24 hours are very much that now Ten Hag is of the mind that maybe keeping Ronaldo isn't such a good thing. The negativity is not worth what he does give you in front of goals. So that's basically every single position on the pitch, and you've got Liverpool on Monday.
The nuts thing about United, though, Joe, is that Ten Hag, without wanting to place all the blame on him, because you just can't. Yeah. Like, he's been in situ in that. Like, he knew he was getting that job before the end of last season. Totally. He was practically in the job, as far as I remember, before the season had ended. Like, he'd essentially gone over and done a recce, and he was, on the fringes of training sessions, etc., etc. And he was there. He had feet under the table essentially before the end of last season. Has had the entire summer, and yet he's scrambling around with chess pieces of, he's brought in 1 or 2 players. Eriksen's one. He doesn't know what to do with them, which seems bizarre.
Martinez,
because he's going with what he knows, and looks like he's going to continue going with what he knows if, other links are to be believed. He needs to accept some responsibility for this, because you don't go through pre-season and having had an extended period in the job before pre-season, knowing you're getting the job from probably March or April of last year, and still manage to put out a team like that. Like, you have to know the raw materials with which you're dealing, and then you have to have a decent list of players handed over to your higher ups before June even starts, and have them secured, you would hope, within a couple of weeks of that. But like, to see other teams around them, to see Forest chalking off players which they want to buy, like, with abandon at the moment, to see other teams like Brighton doing smart business, to see West Ham doing smart business, albeit a little bit more cautious. But literally everybody seems to know what they're doing in that league, bar Manchester United, which is just, it's unthinkable from a club of that stature to be that rudderless.
Yeah, oh, it sure is. Like, Ten Hag is just on the scene and deserves time, as any manager does, but it is an incredibly inauspicious start. And even the Martinez signing, which he drove and he made, looks really questionable already. So Miguel Delaney with us 7:30. We will talk to Pat Nevin maybe a bit more about Chelsea Spurs, which was an amazing game in so many ways. But let's start the news round. Get your texts in. It is brought to you with Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Aaron in Galway, a Liverpool fan, said, I know it's probably not going to happen if United somehow did end up getting relegated. I love that that's a premise we're now introducing after 2 games. Would they even be good enough to survive the Championship? Well, in a way, like, they're so lightweight, they'd be run over by lots of teams in the Championship, actually. I think that's the Brentfords of the Championship would eye them up and think, Ericsson and midfield, Martinez, we're licking their lips.
They'd score enough goals to stay up, I think. Plus the parachute payments as well would be of a massive assistance to them as well.
Okay. United would avoid League One, is what we're sticking our necks out to say here. So there is football this evening. It's both in the Premier League, which we'll come to in just a moment, and then you have Airtricity First Division action as well, Richie.
Yeah, Cork City can take another step towards the title in the First Division tonight. They'll be 4 points clear if they beat third place Waterford at Turner's Cross. Kickoff there is at 7:45. Liverpool played their first home game of the Premier League season tonight with Crystal Palace, the visitors to Anfield. Spot the surprising inclusion in this Liverpool 11. It's Alisson Becker in goal, a back four of Trent Alexander-Arnold, Nat Phillips, Virgil van Dijk and Andrew Robertson. In midfield we've got Fabinho, James Milner and Harvey Elliott, and a front three of Luis Diaz, Mo Salah and Darwin Núñez. For Palace they go to 5 at the back. Guaita starts in goal for them. The former Liverpool man Nathaniel Klein is on the right hand side of the defence. Then in the centre it's Joel Ward, Joachim Anderson and Mark Guehi, with Tariq Mitchell on the left. Eberechi Eze and Czech Doucouré are in midfield, with Jeffrey Schlupp and Wilfried Zaha in support of Jordan Ayew. Kickoff is at 8 o'clock. Mentioned Phillips coming into the starting 11 there. Joe Matip is out with a groin injury, and Joe Gomez is on the bench but not fit enough, it seems, for a place in the starting 11. That indeed does go to Phillips, back in the team for the first time since 2021.
Right, so many injuries. Matip, Thiago, Canade, Oxlade-Chamberlain, Diogo Jota, Caoimhin Kelleher, of course, Curtis Jones. So they're making do a little bit at the moment, Liverpool. Jordan Henderson rested on the bench. They were flat, I think, is the overriding sense, Dave, against Fulham on the opening day of the season. You would anticipate Anfield crowd, evening kickoff, they'll be back to their usual level. Did have the thought after last week's draw in Fulham, will we ever reach a point with this Liverpool group where they put in so much and played in so many big games over the last number of years and probably haven't won what they should have, that just the reserves will drop and it will be harder and harder for them to motivate themselves against teams like Fulham, who are opening day, enthusiasm, pressing, all that kind of stuff? You never feel Manchester City have to be as breakneck as Liverpool to be at their best, or certainly to beat most teams.
Yeah, they're more likely to drop points than Manchester City are if they're having an off day. But I think that's the challenge that Jurgen Klopp has, isn't it? That he just has to continue to try and introduce little bits of new blood into the squad as the seasons tick on, and he's done that pretty successfully with the likes of Diogo Jota, for example. He's got Luis Diaz there, he's still settling into the squad. Darwin Núñez, Thiago, Naby Keita, Oxlade-Chamberlain, these guys that have been introduced season on season to ensure that there is a continued turnover in players, so that he isn't left with a squad that have been listening to his voice for 4 or 5 seasons. Even the departure of Sadio Mane, which is obviously a blow to the squad, but it's just all part of that development process and trying to bring new faces in and make sure there's an element of freshness no matter how many years he's been at the helm. But it did start to go badly wrong for him at Borussia Dortmund after those 2 Bundesliga wins and the trip to the Champions League final. I mean, he left with the team really struggling, and it just looked like his time had run its course there. I don't think that is on the horizon in terms of where he is at Liverpool at the moment. It's probably a few seasons away, but it has happened to him in the past. And my feeling is that this is a Liverpool team that is not at the level that it was at last season and 2 seasons ago when they won the Premier League title. I really have a fear that this is going to be a bit of a non-event as a Premier League season in terms of the title race. I just don't see Manchester City dropping enough points. I think Liverpool are a little bit vulnerable. And will Crystal Palace see that starting 11 this evening? Could be sitting here with egg on my face in a couple of hours after a comprehensive Liverpool victory. But Nat Phillips has played virtually no football over the last 12 months, having played so many games in that injury crisis hit season where they pretty much lost every central defender they had. I think Palace will fancy their chances of getting at least one this evening. And If you end up 4, 5, 6 points behind City, even a handful of games into the new season, it's very difficult to see City surrendering a lead to the point where other teams will be able to get after them. But I hope the likes of Chelsea and Tottenham will be able to take points off them and that it'll be a competitive title race. But we have to be so thankful for what Liverpool have produced over the last 4 seasons. Otherwise, City would be going for 5 or 6 in a row.
Yes, totally agree with all that. There's a degree of can they sustain it again against, these incredible odds, trying to somehow outpace Man City over the course of a season seems near impossible at the moment. Benny says they're not chess pieces, Richie, they're drafts. Leeds fan here, I can't quite contain my excitement that OTB is even mentioning, let alone discussing the relegation of that crowd. I mean, it was a text, Connor. It was a text from a Liverpool fan, but yes, we did read it out. And Mike says, very negative on Manchester United, lads. They'll be top 6 by the end of the season. I mean, yeah, it's kind of grim state of affairs.
That's a text dripping with optimism.
Yeah.
I mean, it is very difficult to see them finishing top 6 with that squad.
We'll try and be more positive about their 4-0 defeat to Brentford on the football show, Mike, between 9 and 10. So, Tuchel, Conte, this was Cody Shefflin, but with far more adrenaline, and things really got going.
Yeah, Thomas Tuchel and Antonio Conte have both been charged this evening with improper conduct by the Football Association following yesterday's touchline confrontations at Stamford Bridge. The two managers were shown red cards after clashing at full time, having already been cautioned during the 1-1 draw between Chelsea and Tottenham. Both managers have until Thursday to respond to those charges.
Hell of a game, Dave. I don't know if you saw much of it. It was just end to end and very lively and really good. And Graham Souness and Sky positively giddy afterwards. It's a man's game once again, which has drawn raised eyebrows, I think, as well.
Yeah, but there's been a statement released, as there in the last hour or so, where he says he was specifically referring to the 2 games involving men that he was covering yesterday afternoon. I, for one, took his words to mean exactly that, but I know there are some people out there that took them to mean something different. But the game itself yesterday was fabulous, absolutely brilliant. It was a throwback to maybe a few years gone by, where every single tackle didn't lead to someone rolling around on the floor waiting for a whistle. There were some really good challenges where players went in for 50-50 balls and just got straight back up. We had 4 goals. We had a couple of controversial refereeing decisions. We had new faces making their mark in their respective teams, and a real derby feel to it as well. And that's before you even get near mentioning what the manager's got up to during the game. I just enjoyed pretty much every minute of that match yesterday afternoon. What an atmosphere as well. It felt like it was a cup semi-final or something. And further evidence that Tottenham aren't the Tottenham we're used to seeing over the years, and evidence that Chelsea aren't going to go away either. I'm really looking forward to when they meet again later in the season, because there does seem to be an element of needle, not just between the managers. We know historically between the 2 sets of fans, they certainly don't like each other, but between the players as well, there's something else going on there. I mean, I haven't seen Kai Havertz as riled and as niggly as he was yesterday. It's not something you normally associate with him, but he was in the thick of most things, and it was just a joy to watch. Proper game.
Yeah. How Romero wasn't red carded for pulling Cucurella's hair is beyond me with VAR intervening. It's just such an odd decision, and I thought Havertz was absolutely fouled in advance of the goal. Maybe they don't want to go back 44 seconds. So I thought Richarlison probably was interfering with play. Mendy had side of the ball, but because he'd bent around Richarlison. So I thought Tuchel had cause to be aggrieved afterwards with the referee. I mean, the refereeing decisions weren't my big takeaway from the game. Like you, I just thought it was an amazing spectacle. I hadn't seen that Souness statement. I saw on TalkSport this morning where definitely passed on the opportunity to, I don't even know if an apology was required, but maybe just to clarify his remarks or withdraw the remarks in some way. I think it's just one of these classic situations whereby there is a middle ground here that is acceptable to everybody, but the 2 extreme sides are the loudest. So there's definitely this is woke culture. He has zero case to answer. This, Simon Jordan was in TalkSport defending him. He was in the room with him on that show with Jim White, saying, this does a disservice to the cause to kind of bring up these non-issues. There's nothing in it. And then you've got others saying it's a disgrace. The man's a misogynist and he should practically be sacked. I think they're both wrong. I mean, there is a bit of a case to answer, but nor is he a disgrace. I think the simple solution here is obvious to most people. Graham, any of us listening know exactly what you meant. You know, like it's a phrase that's been used for decades. We're presuming you didn't mean to cause any offence, but at the same time, when you're saying that sitting beside a female player who has 100 plus caps for England, it jars. And you've got 1,000 other ways that you could express the aggressive play, which is all you're saying. It's like you'd like to see the aggressive play back. So let's just retire that phrase, use any of the other phrases you want to use, and everyone's happy again. It is that simple, I would think.
Yeah, look, we're not entitled to the middle ground anymore, are we? And, you know, I don't think your reasoned, rationalised analysis of the situation has any part to play on Twitter.
It won't go viral, that take. I just offered you there.
And we don't want any part of that. Okay. I mean, it's a very short statement, so short I can just read it for you.
All right.
To clarify my comments from yesterday, I was referring to the 2 Premier League matches I watched live on Sunday afternoon rather than the sport of football. Football is a game for everyone to enjoy.
Yeah.
Short and succinct. I don't really feel there was clarification required, but I mean, you summed it up pretty well. I doubt Graham will use those words in a similar situation again. Look, even if he had said merely players going at it instead of men at it, that would have been the end of it. There wouldn't have been any eyebrows raised at all. But I can see the point he was trying to make, because too often we tune in to the big game on a Sunday afternoon and there are players making a meal of every little challenge that comes in on them, and we're not left talking about what we really want to be discussing after a big game.
Yeah. I thought his sentiment was 100% right. Like, it's such a better watch. This seemed to start with the Euros last year, and long may it continue, because I didn't know what a foul was at a certain point anymore. It was losing me. I think it's much better now. So, Sene Naupu, Richie?
Yeah, she's announced her retirement from international rugby. The New Zealand-born centre made her Ireland debut back in 2015, going on to win 48 caps. Her last outing in a green jersey came in April's Six Nations finale against Scotland in Belfast. She was, of course, omitted from the squad that has travelled to Japan for that 2-test series.
Yeah, amazing contribution, incredibly popular with her teammates, very positive person as well. Had the pleasure of sharing a Virgin studio with her. So, like, it's an amazing story. Arrived here and had this unexpected journey with Ireland. So congratulations to Sene on an amazing career. Your text to 53106, Kieran says, lads, quote, City won't drop many points. This was us saying that. Didn't they lose a 9-point lead last season to leave them needing a win on the last day? They did, Kieran, absolutely, and that's in my mind. But I don't know, Dave, I just don't see them having the same dip this year as our sense.
Yeah, there's a couple of things with them. I feel that they're better overall because they've just brought the best striker in the world to the club. And I do feel that was the one thing missing when it came to, allied to some of the unnecessary tinkering from Guardiola in a couple of big games. But Haaland there makes a difference for me. They are a bit threadbare. And with talk as well that Bernardo Silva might be looking for an exit, I think that would leave them with 18 or 19 senior players, which for a club of its size and financial resources is quite something. That it's not something you would have anticipated seeing as the transfer window was coming to its conclusion. So maybe they need to add a couple of bodies. Now they're definitely looking to bring somebody in the left back position. But if they play at 6 out of 10, they're going to win the game, aren't they? And now they've got an out-and-out centre forward that's probably going to gobble up some of the chances that they haven't been able to really score since Aguero was off his peak, when they had that real goal-poaching centre forward. Jesus was unable to fulfil that role, although he certainly looked capable of it for Arsenal at the weekend. It's just difficult to see many teams beating them. And I do feel that Liverpool are going to drop more points this season than they did last in the season before.
So, Richie, the European Championships continue in Munich.
Yeah, Phil Healy and Charlene Maudsley in the past hour or so have missed out on qualification for the semis of the women's 400 metres. Healy was 6th in her heat in a time of 53.1 seconds, while Maudsley was 6th also in her heat in a time of 52.63. Luke McCann and Andrew Cosgrin are in separate heats of the men's 1500 metres this hour. Earlier, Fionnuala McCormack was 7th in the women's marathon, helping Team Ireland to a 5th place finish overall. Anne-Marie Glynn and Aoife Cook 28th and 33rd respectively in a race won by Poland's Alexandra Lizowska. Hugh Armstrong was 58th in the men's marathon, while Israel Olatunde, one to look out for tomorrow, was just 100th of a second off Paul Hession's national record as he qualified for the semi-finals of the men's 100 metres. Eric Favours, meanwhile, was just 21 centimetres off qualifying for the final of the men's shot put. He was 15th overall with a throw of 19.71 metres.
And by the way, speaking of the European Championships, proof, not that we needed, that Paul O'Donovan in particular and Fintan McCarthy are completely underappreciated. I mean, they won European gold, and here we are 25 minutes into the show. It's just taken for granted, and it's not like this massive cause for celebration, which it should be. And we're hoping to speak to The guys during the week, I should say, we've reached out to them, invited them on the show. But I mean, what they're doing is just extraordinary. Like they waltzed to an Olympic gold, and then yesterday they let the Swiss lads row out for about 1,500 metres, and then everybody knows what's coming. Last 500 they kill them, and it's a European gold, and they don't even think much of it really, and nor do we in some ways, but it's so noteworthy and it should be really celebrated. So I saw a quote from the Skibbereen rowing captain Sean O'Brien, and he was talking about how exceptional they both are, but O'Donovan in particular, who, as we know, is, you know, really one of the greatest Irish athletes of all time, and again, not appreciated. He's never in the, like, if we were to have that conversation, I don't think he'd be thrown into the conversation by enough people. But even Sean O'Brien was saying about O'Donovan that he's got this incredibly high lung capacity, and he has a long stroke, and he's kind of just like perfectly designed for the sport. And I don't know, Dave, there's a certain guilt that way. Like, they win a European gold, and we're like, yeah, that's what you guys do.
Yeah, there's an element of what happened to Sonia O'Sullivan at times in her career. I remember Sonia strolling down the track to win another European gold medal, and you're kind of shrugging your shoulders almost. What have you done for me lately, Sonia?
Yeah.
I mean, it is farcical. It's not like we have a storied history of gold medal success at the European Rowing Championships, but Paul in particular is just such an elite performer that it is just becoming expected. And we look at an Olympic champion, and so we just assume that when it comes to the Europeans, he's going to be the one standing tallest at the end.
Yeah.
And that indeed was the case.
Yeah. And just in case you don't all feel like failures enough out there, on the side he's training to be a surgeon. But other than that, you know, he's just a regular bloke, just like the rest of us. Richie, last couple of stories?
Yeah, we should mention Luke McCann, by the way, has finished in his heat of the men's 1,500 metres. He won't be qualifying for the semi-finals. He was down in around about 10th position in that final this evening. Mona McSharry, meanwhile, 7th in the final of the 200-metre breaststroke at the European Swimming Championships there in Rome. The Sligo swimmer was 2.8 seconds off the podium places this evening. McSharry returns to the pool tomorrow morning for the heats of the 50-metre breaststroke. Earlier, Danielle Hill, 22nd overall in the women's 50-metre freestyle. Hill was also 22nd overall in the 100-metre backstroke. And in the men's 50-metre breaststroke, Dara Green was 23rd overall and Owen Corby was 26th. While Emily Kay finished joint 9th, in the women's Omnium at the European Track Cycling Championships in Munich. She did start brightly with a third in the scratch race, but could only muster 25 points in the final sprint, finishing on 113 overall and 54 points off those podium places.
You could hear my intake of breath there mid-sentence, and didn't want to throw you. Patton Wicklow makes the not unreasonable point. Hi, if you don't want to talk about Man United, then talk about Brentford, small, intelligently run club who don't get the credit they deserve. It's a great story and just as interesting as all this United suffering.
They did that on Saturday, Joe, without Mikkel Damsgaard, who they just bought from Sampdoria, who, if he manages to stay fit, could well prove to be one of the signings of the summer, because he is a brilliant, brilliant player. Just needs to get, I think, a full season or a close on it in terms of games under his belt, because just in terms of raw talent is excellent and more than an adequate replacement for Eriksson in that midfield.
See, Pat, intellectually I'm with you, I hear you, and I loved their fourth goal, which was a joy, but to talk about it on a Monday, I just can't feel it's as interesting as talking about Manchester United. It's a bit like in Match of the Day, Dave, where you get the customary, well, Gary, we should start with Brentford because they were magnificent. However...
Yeah, it's an Irish radio station in a country not full of Manchester United fans, but with a lot of United fans. They are the story. But we will get to the point where United getting turned over by Brentford and Brighton will no longer be the story, because it's becoming pretty customary. I don't even think Manchester United fans are the subject of the derision now that they were a year or two ago when they were losing these sorts of games, because they're quickly becoming an irrelevance when it comes to playing any sort of a part as a factor in a Premier League season. Now they're just a laughing stock for everybody, including a lot of United supporters, I would imagine. But Brentford were absolutely brilliant, and a lot of clubs are maximising what they're capable of doing. Brighton and Brentford are two such clubs.
It's at the stage if they lose by 2 or less against Liverpool, it's like, that's not even enough.
Relief.
Yeah, it's grand. Did you see Will Zalatoris, by the way, last night?
I was listening to the closing holes and the playoff on PJ Tour Radio as I attempted to drift off to sleep, but it was so gripping, and the guys on PJ Tour Radio did a really brilliant job of it. And then I watched the highlights today, because as hard as they tried, they couldn't quite paint the picture of the situation he found himself in with his ball on the final playoff hole, the par 3. When I saw today, I couldn't believe that he was even considering trying to get a club behind that ball.
I know, so many interesting aspects to it. Fired his caddy mid-tournament, a caddy he's very friendly with, and then in the playoff, there was a ball, as Dave says, on the 11th, in the third playoff hole, sudden death, that he was going to attempt to play, and his new caddy was politely almost trying to say, I don't know you that well, but honestly, you're crazy if you try and hit the shot. I don't know how forceful I can be here, but you're a madman. And
for any listeners, they should have a look at his reaction when he held the putt in regulation play on the 72nd green, when he was a real animalistic bellow into the skies. What are they going to say now? I guess he's talking about his putting and the naysayers around his putting stroke. That was pure emotion. And it's why the PGA Tour will always be something that Live Golf can never, ever be. Yes, they may have stronger fields on opposing weeks from time to time. Yes, they're up playing for far more money on that other tour. But there isn't no meaning to it. And there is nothing at stake, really. And you saw what that meant to Zalatoris last night. Absolutely brilliant viewing.
It was amazing, yeah. And this is a guy who's come so close in the majors and missed putts and had a much analysed putting stroke. But man, he was good last night. Yeah, it is going to hurt when he signs for Live, Dave. I'll give you that in a couple of weeks' time. Fellas, we are done. Dave McIntyre, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Richie McCormack, cheers, Rich.
Cheers, lads.
Your chance to win big. News Talk's Summer Cash Machine.
David McGelgan from Thurles became our biggest winner and latest winner on Thursday when he picked up Barry's call.